What I'm trying to do is help us understand that this issue of evil really, really matters. And I bring that up because some of us have been largely sheltered from bad stuff in our lives. As Americans, many of us have been largely sheltered from bad stuff in our lives. Is that fair enough? We don't have to worry about waking up and saying, where am I going to get my next meal? We wake up and worry about which restaurant am I going to go to? How much am I going to throw away? You know, it's astounding how largely sheltered we are. What's also astounding is how those of us who are largely sheltered tend to be the first to have clear, cogent answers to the problem of evil that make perfect sense in our own minds, and we just can't imagine why they don't make sense in someone else. And I say this because Christians are really good at lobbing Romans 8:28 grenades at people. Do you know? Has anybody ever lobbed a Romans 8:28 grenade at you? You're going through something really tough, and they're like, "Hey, Romans 8:28, brother," and you want to smack them, don't you? Right? I mean, it's like the suffering is over there, and you're safe on this other side of the wall in this beautiful garden, and you're like, "Oh man, you're really hurting." Oh, Romans 8:28, brother. You know, it doesn't actually help, does it? It actually, our words, when we jump out too quick and say, this is easy and it's fixable and all that sort of stuff. Look, here's the thing. If you think you can explain every act of evil and no act of evil really bothers and grieves us, you're actually not human. Remember Job's friends? Remember Job's friends? They were great at caring for Job until they started to talk. As soon as they opened their mouths is when they screwed it all up, right? And so if we're going to explain the way the world is, we've got to do this. Now, before we move forward, though, I want to bring up something that's very important to notice. And that is this. Every single worldview has to explain evil, not just Christianity, right? This is important on two levels. Number one is, one level is most apologists or most critics of Christianity, they focus in and say, well, wait a minute, Christianity has to explain evil, as if Christianity is the only worldview that has to explain the existence of evil and suffering. But evil and suffering is the way that the world actually is. And which worldview tries to explain the way the world actually is? All of them do. So all of them have to give an explanation for evil and suffering, not just Christianity. The other reason that this is an important thing to remember is because, fill in the blank, who has a worldview? Everyone. So if you give up on one worldview, what have you done? You've acquired another one. So if we're going to be so convinced, I can't believe in God because of evil and suffering, so I'm going to put him down, what that means is we've picked something else up. And we need to look and say, well, wait a minute, if I'm going to put God down because it doesn't explain evil and suffering, what would I pick up instead? What makes sense? Well, let's look at this. Well, first of all, let's look at those worldviews that would fall into the category of naturalism. Naturalism would be secular humanism and Marxism, or any sort of worldview like existentialism or atheism or hedonism that says that the physical world is all that exists, that God does not exist. One of the great examples of this way of thinking or describing the world this way would be from Stephen Jay Gould, the great evolutionary paleontologist of the 20th century, who said in a Time magazine article, "We are here because one odd group of fishes had a peculiar fin anatomy that could transform into legs for terrestrial creatures. Because the earth never froze entirely during the Ice Age, and a small and tenuous species arising in Africa a 250,000 years ago has managed so far to survive by hook and by crook. We may yearn for a higher answer, but none exist." That just makes you happy to be alive right there, doesn't it? All right? Now, here's what he's saying. Why are we here? Because the universe is a big what? Accident. If the universe is a big accident, then everything that happens in the universe is a big what? Accident. So all the really bad stuff in your life that happens is a big what? Accident. So that gives us a very clear understanding that there's really not evil in naturalism. There's bad luck. If the universe is an accident, get this, there's no way things ought to have been. By the way, remember we talked about that test of the inner world? In other words, our worldview has to explain what we feel inside. If we are just animals with a conscience, why do we stop when one of our friends gets felled, and we stop and we look and we mourn and we cry and it bothers us? Why do we sense that this world is not the way that it should have been? But in naturalism, we shouldn't sense this at all. The universe it's not really evil, it's just bad luck. In fact, it's not only that there's no meaning to real evil. This is Bertrand Russell. I know he probably had better days than when he took this picture, but Russell was one of the top atheistic thinkers, one of the top atheist philosophers of the 20th century. And he once described the world if God did not exist. It's a long quote, but it'll give you the picture. He said, "The world is a place in which man is the product of causes which had no prevision of the end that they were achieving. That his origins, his growths, his hopes, his fears, his loves, and beliefs are but the outcome of the accidental collocation of atoms." Do you think about that? Could you imagine proposing to a girl that way? You know what I mean? "Honey, I love you because of the accidental collocation of atoms." No fire, no heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave. All the labor of the ages, all the devotion, all the inspiration, all the noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system. The whole temple of man's achievement must inevitably be buried beneath the debris of a universe in ruins. All these things, if not quite beyond dispute, are yet so nearly certain that no philosophy which rejects them can hope to stand. Only within the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair can the soul's habitation be safely built. Now, you know what I love about this quote? Is he being honest? Absolutely. But here's the point. If we live in a world in which everything is an accident, so all the bad stuff that happens to us are nothing more than what? Accidents. That's also true not only of the bad stuff, but also of the what? The good stuff. Did you pick up on this? That's true of the good stuff. In other words, the worst moment that's ever happened to you stinks to be you. The best moment that ever happened to you, not stinks to be you. You don't have any hope. There's not evil. The evil itself loses its meaning. So before you give up on God for atheism, just realize you're not going to get anything back.